All right. Hello, everybody. And this is not coming to you live. We tried and we just kept crossing signals, and then I had all kinds of technical problems. And for me right now, YouTube and Zoom decided not to play very well together, and I keep getting an error something, and we haven't figured out what's going on yet. So we decided it was still important to come to you with this topic of people around me don't understand, and so we're recording this, so you're not going to be able to chat and put in questions and comment and interact with us. Sorry about that, but we're here, right, Alan?
We are here,
We
despite
are.
the difficulties and my miscommunications. You know, one of the stupid things people say to us is, hey, Alan, do you want to be on my show? And then the person says yes, and then Alan doesn't show up on time when the filming or when the live broadcast. So like I said, somebody wanted us to do this right now at this time, and we're both here.
Yes.
And it's nice. Thank you for the honor of asking me to chat with you today. I love the work that you're doing, always reaching out and trying to help others. So it is my honor and my privilege to contribute in any way that I can today with you.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say that, because I feel the exact same way. I mean, you and I haven't had a chance to do much together. I mean, we've kind of run in some of the same circles and our paths have crossed, but we haven't been able to do anything like this together. And
Right.
I do feel very blessed and honored, because I do know that you have contributed so much to the grief world. And I was thinking maybe you can you still chalk up this time thing to grief fog? Does it still happen that far down the road? Tell me it does, right? So
well, I have two choices. I could either chalk it up to old age or grief fog. So, you know, and when I do both, I get looked at funny. Now, I have to write everything down now. Now, when Ashley first died, my daughter Ashley, 2001, I literally did, it's so common, as we know, I couldn't, we write lists, and so we don't forget it and we lose the lists. Now I'm kind of getting on the other end of that, where I'm getting a little older. I'm going, oh yeah, it's coming back to me. But so what you want to talk about?
Well, we're going to talk about people around me don't understand. Don't understand what I'm going through, and it's a very common subject. I don't know of a single grieving parent who doesn't deal with that topic. And I'd like to start out, Alan. You mentioned Ashley, and I would love to give you the opportunity to share Ashley with us and tell us your story.
Well, thank you very much. My daughter Ashley was 18 years old, had just graduated high school in May of 2001, and in August of 2001, she died in an automobile accident. And, she was an old soul, Laura. I mean, she was a writer. I was a writer. She was wise beyond her years in many ways. And, we'd been around because we'd lived in Nashville. I was in the music business. I was in the radio business as a network radio reporter at the time of her death. But I always tell people she was my biggest fan, my harshest critic, but boy, she knew her stuff. And so, I'm coming on here in August, will be 19 years, which is hard for me to imagine because I've been involved with support groups like the Compassionate Friends, Bereaved Parents of the USA, and many others. So I've had a lot of support in that time, talked to tens of thousands of people, shaken their hands, hugged their necks, and heard their stories of some of the insensitive and ignorant, maybe well-meaning things that people say. And I think today that you picked a great topic because there's so much to talk about. And between you and I, we can just about recreate the most commonly asked questions because we get those all the time, don't we?
Yeah, yeah. I want to ask you something. I want to, before we go that direction, there's something very interesting, fascinating to me that I've heard you say. And in case there are parents that feel the same way, I think it's good to hear it. I have heard you say that the worst day in your life was not the day Ashley died.
Oh, thank you for leading me that. It's true. When I tell my story, I tell people when you got the call or the knock at the door or the visit from the doctor, the chaplain, however you found out about the death of your loved one, and in my case, my daughter Ashley, life doesn't prepare us. I mean, you can't practice that kind of pain. You can't rehearse that kind of hurt and the shock that we are in. And so we just I look back now, and many of the things I did in those early days, I'm not sure I could do again today. I tell people within 72 hours of getting that call, I picked out a casket and a plot and started putting a PowerPoint together and music and food and a venue for this thing we're calling a celebration of life. And we go through the motions. We see people talking, but sometimes their lips are just moving. And so
kind of like that Snoopy teacher thing, isn't it? Charlie Brown teacher, want,
yeah,
want.
It is. But we do that. And what I told people is, we had this service, hundreds of people, and, later people would say, what a beautiful service. And I would look at them and go, really, you were there? Realized how much of that I didn't remember. So I say, when I tell my story, and everyone's story is different, that you would think that Ashley's death that day was the worst day of my life, but it wasn't. I barely remember much about that day. But the worst day came, just a couple months later, when I woke up and I looked out the window and I saw the rest of the world going on with life as though Ashley had never lived, had never died, and as though I wasn't sinking in a pit of my own grief. And that's the day that I let out a primal scream, the likes of which I'd never heard come out of this body. And that was the time that, fortunately for me, was about the time I'd found a support group, which literally saved my life. People say, no, I don't know that I'd be sitting here today doing this interview with you had I not found a group of people who understood me. That was the worst day because it all became real. And no, was shock completely gone? No, but it began to wear off and the reality set in and the trauma set in. And I believe truly that is when our grief begins, because that's when we sort of can wrap our mind around the fact that we're not going to hold them again here in this life. And so I do feel that way, for others it's different. But that's the day life as I knew it ended and life as I now know it began. And that's where I guess we started picking up the pieces or, cleaning up the rubble or laying in bed and not doing anything at all. We do what we have to do to survive in that moment.
Isn't it amazing how our lives have become a before and after?
That's one of the most common things I would say, and wouldn't you agree, that people that have had a loss like this, that is how we, it is the demarcation point for most of us. And it's interesting, as we get down the road a little bit, and I don't care, I look back and I go, oh, Ashley liked that song. And then I'll look at it and go, no, Ashley wasn't alive when that song. We can't remember, it all jumbles, but we probably had an experience with that song where we thought, Ashley would love that song. Ashley would love that movie. That same feeling. So
yes.
Yeah, I think those are some of the most normal, and as my good friend Darcy Sims used to say, natural feelings that we can have in grief. And is that our life is on a new trajectory. And why wouldn't it be? How could it be on the same trajectory? So we learn to survive in spite of the people around us who don't get it whatsoever,
Yeah. So let's jump into some of these things that we do deal with that others just don't get it. And I think at first it hits us in the face in a way that I don't even know how to talk about this or answer this. I mean, a simple question like, how are you? I mean, it can just, it depends on who's asking. It depends on how you are doing. It depends if you want to really be truthful about how you're doing. It depends, it's like, are they asking sincerely? Is this just a common greeting and they don't really want to know? And by the time your mind thinks of through all of these options and thoughts, you're just exhausted even by thinking of, and you just say, fine.
Yeah. Or we avoid people because,
yes.
One of the first pieces of one of the first things I ask people to consider who are new in grief is it is awkward for us. We're learning a new language. We're learning a new world. We're in uncharted waters. And when somebody asks how you are doing early on, I ask them to consider that not everybody is entitled to that information at that time. So if you don't want to answer, a lot of people get very nervous when someone says, how many children do you have?
Yes, that's
Well, that is, everyone's not entitled to that answer. And you described it really excellent there. All those things are running through your mind. We're walking a tightrope in a sense when we're in grief early on, because we're trying to function, because the guy at the electric company doesn't care whether or not my child just died. So we're trying to keep our world functioning, while at the same time, we're trying to honor our own pain and grief and feel it. And sometimes when we get a little bit upright and somebody comes along with that question or whatever, we're fully entitled to say, I'm fine, if that's what it takes. Or how many children do you have? Well, I've got 2 boys. If I tell you about, it doesn't matter. If I tell you about Ashley, you're probably going to be uncomfortable anyway. And that's why I like support so much, Laura, because when we have friends that understand our loss, and support doesn't mean you have to go to a support group, but another person who understands or has had a similar loss, we can talk to those people and they get that. So I don't believe we dishonor our a child or our loved one who's died because we don't tell every Tom, Dick, and Harry about him. You got a second? I'll tell you, this is kind of I had to ask therapists later why I did what I did. But when we were driving, we were in Arizona. I lived in Colorado when Ashley died. Was taking my oldest stepson to be a freshman at the University of Arizona. So we were in Tucson when we found out. So as we're coming back home, his mom and I and him, we had stopped and then spent the night, and we're driving across Utah out there where it's really pretty, and we're going to go to the crash site. And I see a winery out there in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, oh, a winery, let's stop. First of all, I don't even drink wine, but I thought, let's just stop. So pulled up into the winery, and his mom drank wine, and I got out of the car, and we're just looking around, and I tell the lady at the counter, I go, yeah, my daughter died in an automobile accident yesterday afternoon. We're headed back to Colorado, and this poor woman is like putting, giving me free stuff, free wine opener. Brenda's tasting a couple of things, and we got out of there. And then later I thought back and I thought, what on earth was I doing? Well, they explained it to me that when the shock like that hits us, sometimes we just literally, like a breaker going off, we have to go into a compartment of our life, something that is familiar to us. Well, if we would have been driving there on a vacation, I would have stopped at that one. But we just stop. And another friend of mine who's kind of an icon in the grief world said when their son died, they went to their favorite restaurant and sat on the patio and just drank a Diet Coke. And they later thought, why did we do that? Because this is something that, we might do. So we're
normal for just a moment.
Exactly. And others would never understand that. And that's why I keep saying, the more we have a familiar face, someone we know or someone we get to know who's experienced the same loss, they can help us through things like that, because it's maddening. Early on, this grief is maddening, and it's crazy. It's crazy making. So anyway, there's my wine story for you. I'm sure you've got something like that too.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for sharing that. It is amazing how it's like we don't even understand ourselves. How do we expect other people to understand us?
Exactly.
It really, when you stop and think about it, we want other people to understand our grief. Number one, if you've never lost a child, you can't understand it. It's just impossible. I didn't understand it. I was totally clueless on what this life was like for a parent who's had a child die. And yeah, the other thing is we don't even make sense to ourselves half the time. So
Nope.
How can we expect other people to understand us and the choices we make and what we say and what we do or don't do? You mentioned something, and I can't remember what you said, but it did remind me of something. And I think Mitch is the one who have heard say it. It might have been you, but you two have been together so much over the years. I'm sure it's come from both of you. But the whole thought about our grief is like almost like starting over again in age.
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
that we
that's
start out
Mitch's.
as an infant and we can't do anything for ourselves. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's one of his. Has done a lot of amazing things, I think, in just I always called him the researcher, but it was fascinating. I think it was based on Erickson's work of a child. So when we're first in grief, we're an infant. What do? We cry. We want to be held. We need to be fed. We just need people to reach out to us. And then as we go through this, even up to, in year 2, it can be different, but we're branching out. As we get to year 5, autonomy sets in. And in year 5, sometimes we say, no, I can do that on my own. No, I don't need so much of that. But it really is true, because like I said, our life does start over.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something that's really important that I don't hear a lot of people say here just a minute ago. So we're relearning everything. And a lot of times people say, if somebody acts hurtful to you or insensitive to you, well, by golly, hear what it is they mean, not what it is they say, or, help correct them. But what you said is more true. We don't even understand why we're thinking and feeling what we're thinking. So how are we able, why should we expect of ourselves to have the ability
Yes.
to correct people? Sometimes the best thing for us to say is, honestly, my world is out of control. My head, my heart is out of control. I'm not sure what I want, what I need, what I don't want, what I don't need. The best way you could help me is just to walk beside me as I figure that out. If you could just do that. But, people can say something and not mean anything by it, and it can just crush us because we don't know what the truth is. If I told you, you're 7 foot tall, and you would know that you're not 7 foot tall when you're new in grief.
I'm a little 5-footer.
Yes, but enough to know when you're new in grief and somebody says they're in a better place. Well, you may be a faith person and believe that. Doesn't matter to you at that time. When somebody says to you, well, at least they didn't suffer, or this or that. We're so raw and so new that we don't know how to take that. We don't know how to comprehend what does that mean. Well, yeah, I get it that you're trying to be helpful, but no, I don't have to accept that. And I think part of protecting ourselves is, to go back to what you said, is understanding that we don't know what we don't know. We can't process and figure out all that. I don't know at 2 months, 3 months, maybe 6 months, a year, how to answer how many children do you have. I'm going to learn that as I find who I am. I always tell people the part of grief that I don't think we talk about enough is that it's scary. Because Laura, think about it. When we first have that loss, our world is like our legs are cut out from under us. And then we go through this learning time and period. It's not just time, but it's what we learn. It's what we understand about how we individually cope. But who we are going to be in our grief isn't yet formed. Right. And what a scary place. And sometimes that's the better conversation with people who say or do things to us that are insensitive, and say, look, I am scared to death. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to survive this. That's hurtful to me, but I don't even know if that should be hurtful to me right now. Yes, you'd say they're in a better place, but right now, if you could just walk with me and just hear me and just not try to fix me or put me on a timer.
Or try to make me feel better. Yeah.
And because you may be well-meaning, and I don't want to lose anymore. I don't want to lose a friendship. I don't want to lose a family relationship over this. But I'm so raw that the things you say could rub me the wrong way, and I couldn't necessarily even explain it to you. I just know if you'll listen and walk with me, as I begin to figure out, I'll share it with you. That's that to me is a strategy that if we put that in place, we could save ourselves. Because the expectations we often have on the support we're going to receive from others, is expectations are planned disappointment. That is.
And how many parents have you heard say over and over and over again, the people that I thought were going to be there for me, gone.
Absolutely.
No support at all, or I don't see or hear from them. And, you have brought up several times why it's so important to plug into people who get it, who understand, because they are going to be there for you.
Yeah, and they're going to be like you and say, you know what? No, you're not. You aren't crazy. No,
Mhm.
but because you say that out of experience,
Yeah.
and you say that with your proven survival. Nothing backs up a statement more than your proven survival. So when people come up to you and I, or someone comes and talks to me, and they say, "Well, no, this guy's got 19 years. How did he do it?" I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but just by me telling you what's worked for me, or by me sharing with you what I've seen work for tens of thousands of other people, might give you that one thing that you can hang on to, which is what you're doing so eloquently with your with this program that you're doing.
Yeah, and you were talking about even answering the question, how many kids do you have? For me, I remember the first time Becca was my oldest of 5. And for me, the first time I said 4, it was like never again. Never again will I say 4. It just felt so wrong. But it was wrong for me. And there may be times, and I've heard from a lot of parents, one in particular I'm thinking of right now, she's over 30 years out from her 5-year-old son dying. And she has said that she has found that has changed over the years. I mean, her answer fluctuates, and not just moment to moment, but almost season to season of life, that sometimes she feels perfectly okay. She doesn't feel like she's
Yeah,
betraying her son, or miscounting him, or pretending like he didn't exist. It's just, it's so far behind her now, and she doesn't have that need. I mean, she knows he's with her. She
yeah,
knows, and it doesn't become a need for her to have to include him in the head count here on earth.
yeah,
As I'm asking.
yeah, yeah. And I think that again is to reassure people that in the end, doing it your way is
Hmm.
probably going to always work best for you. I guess probably and always. It will always be
Yes.
the best choice for you at that time. Trying to imitate or mirror just what someone else is doing, like you said. I've seen the same thing with early on. There's some people who say, I absolutely will not include my child who has died. And that, to them, I say, that's the way to go.
Yes.
I'm saying for me, and there were a couple of times I had to learn, and we all learn through the experience. There was a
And a
couple
lot
of
of that
times
is when we do it a way that it's like, I can't do it that way. That doesn't work for me. And that's
yeah,
okay. That's okay, because that's how we figure it all out.
yeah. The lady at that wine store was a great example. And then, and I would be seeing clients after, when I was fairly new, and I'd say it sometimes, yeah, my daughter just died in a car accident. And I'd see the mortified look on the people's faces, trying to figure out, oh, please don't make me have a conversation about it. And I realized that, you know what? Yeah, you don't deserve it. It's not your fault.
Hmm.
So, but once again, I had support from a couple months into my loss. Had I not had that, who knows? I may have been punching people out at 6 months. And, how dare you? But I knew I couldn't live life with all this grief and all this pain and mad at a world that didn't understand it, because I didn't understand it. And when I was working in radio before Ashley died, I covered Columbine High School. And I got to know those families and interviewed many of them many times. And as I looked back, I thought, oh my Lord, if I knew then what I know now, I'd have put my microphone down,
Yeah.
and I would have just said, tell me about your child, tell me about your brother, tell me about your sister. So that helped me. It grounded me in a sense that it made me realize I would have probably been, and I'm a sympathetic, loving, I've always been a kind, compassionate person, but I didn't get it till I got it. So I try to use that same grace to grant to other people. But it doesn't mean that we are nullifying the fact that people saying things to you can be very hurtful. I sometimes think there's characters in our lives. I always say most of us have a cheerleader. And the cheerleader is always like, you could do it, you could do it, you could get back up. Then we have a coach, and that's the one that's trying to fix us. Never had our loss, but that they're going to fix us. And then we have the one that doesn't speak and talk, that avoids us, the disappearing act. But I used to do a workshop on that. You know, people would kind of laugh at it, but you have those characters in your life, and some just can't handle it, can they?
Mm.
I mean, did you find that in your loss, that there were people,
Oh yeah.
family and friends, that just couldn't handle?
Yeah, I think more friends than anything. It's still hard. It still baffles me sometimes. I mean, and I'm almost 9 years into this myself from Becca's death, and it still sometimes baffles me how it, I don't know, it's just the friendship. It just feels like the friendship just isn't there anymore, and it's like I don't get it. Um and it, yeah, it's, and to try to figure out why really doesn't serve us well either, does it? I mean, to try
No,
to
and
figure out someone else's motive or their why, it's not going to make us feel any better. It's not going to bring that person back. It doesn't help.
and you know, in fairness, I guess I'm always trying to be the look at the whole picture. Like,
Hmm.
you, I don't know that these people were friends necessarily. Maybe they were a drinking buddy or a barbecue buddy or a shopping buddy. You know, if I ran out of milk, maybe that they could handle stuff like that. But we do change, and if we accept the fact that we do change, and all of us play a role in someone else's life. Like, everyone knows someone who was nice and chubby like I am now today, and they lose a whole bunch of weight, and their chubby friends aren't always happy for them.
Mm.
They want that person that wants to go back to the to the Cheesecake Factory every Friday and split 4 cheesecakes, you know, because we do play a role in people's lives. We're part of the fabric. And when we have this loss, the sad part is we don't usually get to hear the rest of the story, like you just said. And some people just run from it. I've had people, and you probably have too, I met lots of people who had a friend have a child die, and then later their own child died. And they went back and were just horrified at how they had treated their friend earlier. A lot of times I've seen where they would reconnect and apologize. So we can't know what we don't know.
Hmm.
And some people just aren't equipped for it. And we get our feelings hurt. And that's the part of grief. And Mitch and I used to talk about this a lot, but the secondary losses. I
Yeah.
tell people the loss of a child in your life, the best analogy I have of it is it's like a big boulder falls out of the sky into the center of a crystal clear lake. Boom, everyone sees that splash and they look at it, oh, that's horrible, oh my goodness, oh my gosh, and then all of a sudden they go like, okay, and then, you know, they're on to the next thing. But what they don't stick around to see are those waves that keep rolling and that keep pushing us to the shore. So we have a lot of losses. Friendships are one of them. Loss of our own identity. You know, a lot of times somebody being maybe rude or insensitive to us, we could have handled before we got into this grief.
Yeah.
We lose our self-worth. We might feel guilty and responsible for the death of our own child. We feel horrible about it because we're parents. It doesn't matter how old or how rational it is. We believe we should have protected it. There's so much going on with us, like you said, that our first responsibility is to understand ourselves.
Yes.
And that takes a long time, but we can do it together. And hopefully, if we can just hold those relationships together, the ones that are worth holding.
Hmm.
But frankly, I looked around after maybe like 2 years, 3 years, and I realized that my entire friend list, closest friends, uh, were people who had experienced this loss.
Hmm.
I'm thinking, now how did I don't remember making a
It took
conscious
me longer
decision.
than that, but yeah, it is. Yeah.
I didn't mean to trade them in or out, but I noticed who I was talking to the most, who I was relying on the most, were now these people. And now today, it's just true all over the country. That's where my friendships. I feel comfortable. You and I could be out somewhere hanging out, and we may never have to talk about Becca and Ashley. We could just be talking about what's going on in the world. But there's a comfort level that we would have because we both know that if all of a sudden you
Yeah.
just started a
Something.
tear, you get, oh my God, that's a Becca moment right there. I did, oh my God, that
Yes.
girl looks like Ashley. We're
Yeah.
perfectly comfortable. The environment created by us together is a safe space, even when we don't need it. That's the best.
Mhm.
That's what I love about the friendships, why I always talk about support. And I think that's what's going on with the whole social media. It's created something that was never there when my daughter died. And you know, and I'm glad I had a support group right in my town, a Compassionate Friends chapter. But boy, for all those who didn't, now today, isn't it amazing how much support you can go on there and start having a conversation about this, the insensitive things people say and the way they treat us, and you can have
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
25 different opinions,
Yeah.
you know, and stories shared with you just immediately. So I think that's a good thing in the grief world.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember talking about just the rawness and how much it might hurt or whatever. I remember, I mean, I had never David Becca's death was the first close family member ever that we had
Mm,
lost. So I had no grid for grief whatsoever, for deep
mm,
grief, any kind of deep grief. And but something in me knew. I actually had someone who has remained by my side and through all of this, and she was a very dear friend of mine. But she was the person that I called kind of between the death and the funeral. And if I just was losing it, I could call her and she would come over and just sit with me and talk with me and cry with me. And I told her at one point, I said, Kath, at the funeral, can you just like hover around? Because if somebody says something really stupid to me, I don't know how I'm going to act. I don't
yeah,
know what I'm going to do. So can you just kind of hover around and just keep me in check?
yeah,
Don't do anything.
absolutely.
Yeah, and she did that. It was good. I mean, every once in a while I'd look out and she'd just be, right around somewhere, because we just we don't. This is a new world to us.
Yeah,
It's such a new
yeah,
world to us.
yeah. I look back and I go, only being in shock could I have done a lot of what I did. You know, we go to the cemetery and we drive away, and I look back and I think, you know, that shock is a gift in a way, but as the reality sets into it, um, it's we're swimming upstream. Niagara Falls is behind us. We sense it's there, but we're swimming upstream, and it's a scary, life changing. It changes everything about us. But you know, the hope in all of that, Laura, is that a lot of that change we can turn that into hope, a life of deep meaning, a life of great purpose, and we see that every day.
Yeah.
But man, when you're in the rush of it, you know, get a friend,
Mhm.
get support, be easy on yourself, take it, you know, grant yourself grace, and ask those around you. Really, that's what people say. They say, Alan, what do I say to someone then who's just lost a child? What do I say? I say, well, there's two things you can say that you can never, ever probably offend them. And they say, what's that? I say, well, one is when you show up, just show up and say, I am here to hurt with you. That's
Mhm.
it, that little line. I am here to hurt with you. And the other thing you can say is, there's something that I could do for you right now that would be of help. If
Mhm.
you say no more than that, and just repeat that to them. I'm here to hurt with you. Is there something I could do for you right now that would be of help? Those are the people that we remember. And, you know, there are superstars out there who haven't had our loss, like your friend.
Mhm.
I have a friend that I served on the board of directors with, a man named Brian James from Kansas City area. And when his daughter Lauren died, he had a friend that he would just go over to this friend's house. I don't think this friend had ever even had children.
Mhm.
And Brian would go show up at his house on these tough days, and the guy would look at Brian and he'd say, so what are we going to do? We're going to watch TV, we're going to talk, or we're going to work. Brian would say, whatever, that's it.
Mhm.
They'd either watch TV, they'd talk, or they'd work on a project.
Mhm.
People that will just be with us,
Mhm.
lay with us in our grief. That's the true support. And
Mhm.
they allow us within ourselves to have the space to move forward.
Yeah. When you talked about people that will just hurt with us, to say, I'm here to hurt with you, it immediately brings to mind the scripture verse that talks about rejoicing with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Some translations say to mourn with those who mourn. And
Amen.
specifically as believers, people who are Christians in the body of Christ, whatever you want to call it, it seems like as a whole, we're so good at that, rejoicing with those who rejoice. But for some reason in the church realm, in the Christian realm, we're not very good at weeping with those who weep. We want to fix them. We want to help them. We want those, but she's in a better place now. God will work everything out for good. I mean, it's like these things that they want to say the right thing, and it's just not helpful, is it?
No, and I've been blessed to do many workshops over the years for ministers and chaplains, and one of the things with ministers, I do see a change coming, and I've done more church events, and as I move forward and change from these national tours I'm doing, I plan to do more with churches, because ministers will tell you that they got one class in seminary on grief, and they don't understand it. And so one time when I was doing this workshop in Kentucky or somewhere for ministers, the guy came in and they said, we want can this guy be on a panel or whatever? Well, his daughter had died. And I think it was about 2 years before he had left the ministry. Mm-hmm. But I learned more from this guy in the few times I talked to him over the years, just how much pressure was on him to get back and start telling people what he knew in his heart wasn't how you grieve. Mm-hmm. So one thing that show up and say, we are here to hurt with you, and is there something I can do for you now? I say more to ministers and to bereavement teams at churches, and because that is what you can do. I've had a lot of people say, Alan, ministers say, over the last whatever years, we've had 5 families in our church lose a child, and all of them left the church. And so I would ask them, what's your protocol been? What have you been doing for them? And they'll say, well, we show up, I bring the Bible out, we sit down, we try to encourage them with verses and whatever. So I say, let me ask you to consider this. And that's when I say to say those 2 things. And I say, look around. You can see grass that needs mowed, or dishes that need done, or meals that need to be brought in. But I said, really, here's where the rubber's going to meet the road, is you let that family know, say the holidays are coming. You let that family know, we do a lot of celebrating here around Christmas. And we understand that you don't even know how you're going to feel or if you want to celebrate, but we're going to be here and we're going to walk with you through this holiday season, even if we have to come separately to your house and you're not comfortable here. Send a card every week or every month for the first so many months, and after that, continue to send a card every month or 2 months. When that child's birthday comes, take them to the side and say, we know Becca's birthday is going to be next week, and we know this could be a difficult time for you. Is there anything we could do right now to help you remember that day? When the child's anniversary date comes, say the same thing. And I said, let me tell you what, those people, not only will they not leave your church, you couldn't kick them out because that's what they need. So that's one of the things, Laura, I will tell you, one of the biggest things I want to do in the remaining years I do this. I grew up in the Baptist church, and then I got away from that, and then Ashley's death really more brought me back to it. But our people of faith, you said it so well. There's a lot of learning on the compassion.
Yes.
And when I went through a grief class not long after Ashley died, and it was at my church. And every Saturday, it was like a 10-week grief group or whatever. We would get there, and the woman who facilitated would say, now look, here's your faith, okay? We're going to set our faith right here at the door, just like we're taking off our shoes to come in. We're not losing our faith. But when we come in this room, we're going to work on our grief. We're going to talk about our grief. And just like your doctor wouldn't prescribe to you if you needed to do physical therapy on your knee that you just had replaced, wouldn't say that we're going to sit around and talk about how it will get better. We would do the work. And she really helped me to see about grief work is work. It's something that we do. It's real. And the more that we can relay that, and I see more churches doing that, and I'm blessed for that. But I think it's a big spot out there, because when we go through a loss like this, Laura, what do we need? If we have friends and support, and we have a spiritual family, a faith family to help us, we just increase our odds. But if we get burned by friends and we don't have that support, and then our faith family causes us to be phony and say I'm fine, because if we don't say that, then we're not living up to our beliefs.
We're not getting the
do
victory. We're not leaning on God enough. We're not,
And that's not a slam on the church. I think it's a door open for ministry in the church. And this last fall, I forget where I was. I was over in Texas or somewhere, and I went and did this wonderful group. In fact, I didn't even really know who I was playing for altogether. It's a woman I knew over there, set it up through somebody. But I get there to this big church, and there's this group of people all in these T-shirts, and and so I had all lost that night, but they had a specific group of them who had loss of a child. So I don't know, there's 75 people there or something. So I'm asking around, and I said, what is the deal with this? Well, they have this whole bereavement team that they are just immersed in compassion for loss, and they get it. And I just thought, wow, if we could take this and put this out into the church world.
No kidding. Just like we have a children's ministry team and a prayer team, have a bereavement team, hospitality team. Wow.
Exactly. And I think the hope is there, but it comes with education. And sometimes ministers, just like funeral home directors, they don't want to be told anything. It's not that we're telling them. I never tell them anything. I'd ask you to consider this. So how's it been working with you? Why did you lose those families? Why do you believe? And I said, because if there was something for them here, the question is, if there's not enough for them here in the church, they're not going to return. What is here for them if they've had that loss? Because I will tell you, they're going to question their faith. They're going to question their own abilities. They're going to question life. They're going to question death. They're going to have an anger at God. Is there a place here where that is welcome?
A safe place. Yes.
That's right. And if you are not consciously providing that to people, they will not come.
Yeah.
So, but it's a big task, but we can work on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And who knows, maybe some people who watch this for however long, you'll hear this and all of a sudden something's just stirring in you. And it's like, maybe that's what you're being called to do through
exactly
your child. Maybe you're going to be one of them that's going to be called to the churches to help educate the church leadership. And there's so much we can do.
I don't know. Do you know Kay Warren on that note?
I don't know her, but yes, I do know that they had lost their son through suicide. And
Matthew, their son, and she is an absolutely terrific woman. And she came to Scottsdale, or Dallas, Texas, to our conference at the Compassionate Friends. So I got to know her a little bit. But what she did is on the 1-year anniversary of her son Matthew's death. Now here they've got one of the biggest churches, in the country. And she just wrote a rant basically about the people in the church, what they were expecting from her and avoiding her. And it's one of the most powerful things I had written. But she is the kind of person, and I know a lot of her work now is on mental illness and on suicide, and it's wonderful. But the doors that she has opened for people to listen, because she is, the pastor's wife in this situation, and people were putting those expectations on her. Yeah. So I just truly adore what she's doing. And I think along that line, that's the message that we need to, because if the church isn't for hurting people, like you said, we can't mourn with those who mourn, we're not doing our job.
Yeah. Yeah. So Alan, let's talk about family. I hear so often, so I know that you do, how often, and I just got an email this week of someone, it's like, okay, we just hit the year mark. And my family's telling me that I really need to be getting past this by now. And so often families don't make allowances. They don't understand. Why do you continually want to celebrate your child's birthday? Why do you keep dragging your child into everything? Why can't you just let it go?
Yeah.
What are some things that we can, that hurts? I mean, when it's your own family that won't validate and recognize your child. And so what are some suggestions that you have for people who are dealing with something like this with their own family?
Well, it's heartbreaking when we see it, as you said, and we see it all too often,
Hmm.
don't we? Um, family is a relationship. It's not maybe a friendship that you can just, I'll just toss it away. And we don't want to do that. And that is a place, especially when we get down to the 1 year mark, where we have to sometimes educate our family to
Hmm.
what we need.
Yes.
So as I boil it down, most people like myself, when Ashley died, I didn't know a lot about grief. So certainly before she died, I knew very little. And that's what is going on in our families. What they know through grief is what they're seeing in us. And they're seeing us ravaged by a loss. And so there will be people in the family who want to coach us, some are who are quiet and don't say anything, and some who are going to try to cheerlead us, but they truly don't understand the loss. So it takes having a heart to heart. I had a woman come up to me one time, and her son had died, and I believe they were on the 1 year anniversary was a disaster. But her family wouldn't talk about her son, and her dad, they would go have a balloon release out at the cemetery, and he wouldn't come to those things. He couldn't do it. So they were getting ready to have Easter, and she asked me the question just like you did, what could I do? And I said, this is what I would suggest to you is, as you get together for the Easter dinner, gather everyone around, just gather them around and tell them this, that the death of your son is something that will never go away for you, and that you will continue to love him as long as you're alive. You'll stop grieving for him when you stop loving him. And so to the people in the room, let them know, if you love him, you have my permission to grieve for him as long as you love him. And I'm asking you to please give me permission to grieve for him as long as I love him. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to love him the rest of my life, every day I draw a breath. And she said, when we have these dinners, I had my feelings hurt at Thanksgiving or Christmas because nobody would talk about him. She said, how about this? We come together and everybody just say a little story or something about him. I promise you, if we do that, I won't be coming in T-shirts and hats and balloons for him. So anyway, so she said, could we all do a story? So they went around and they did it, and they got to her father. And her father said, they were holding hands, and he just started shaking. And he goes, I can't do it. And then he just kept shaking. He says, but I've got to do it for Mikey. So her dad proceeds to tell a story about how when Mikey was little, they were in church, and his mom sang up in the choir, and they were singing and all that. And while the mom was singing, somebody popped a microphone, hit it, and went boom. And Mikey looks up and he goes, what the hell was that? Out loud. And just like you're laughing, Laura, the whole group laughed. And she said, Alan, it has been different ever since. So if we can equate, we shouldn't have to teach people that grief is love. Love didn't die when somebody died. And just hold the line. And I was taught so many good things, but I used to tell my family and friends this: do not invite me to your event ever. Family event, holiday event, it doesn't matter. Do not invite me if Ashley is not invited.
Yes.
Do we have to be proactive? Yes. But I am not going to go to your house and pretend that Ashley never lived, that Ashley never died, and that I am not sinking in a pit of my own grief.
Right. And that
I think that's
playing with the other cousins who are there, and yes, all of that.
I think that's where, and I do that as part of my holiday workshops, and I think that makes the most impact, because people come back and go, oh my Lord, just stand your ground. Don't try to figure everyone out individually. Let them know that you will not come if your child is not invited. And again,
also,
it doesn't.
think about ways that you can bring your child with you.
Yep.
That, you know, I mean, even something as simple as I'm bringing Becca's favorite movie, and while I'm there, I'm going to watch it, and I'm inviting everybody to come watch her favorite movie with me today. Or, you know,
Right.
setting out a picture in a book, write something to her, or write something, a memory, or or even when families give a toast,
That's a big one. Yes.
can we include my child in that? Or, you know, we have to, not can
Or
we?
have a toast,
Yes,
to the
yes.
child is
So,
huge.
I mean, to even go into this or even ahead of time, kind of like you said, setting the ground and say,
Exactly.
we need to remember because we
Yeah.
all loved and we all miss, and we need to remember and honor and find ways to include my child.
And it comes back to the thing I said about expectations. If you take all expectations off your family and friends, when they do something, you will be pleased. And then when you sit down, but to expect that they know what to do. You know, when you're early on, you don't know. Figure yourself out. And what you need, Laura, and what I need could be two different things.
Yeah.
Some people love pictures all over the place and all that. Some people don't like that as much. But once we figure out what we need, let's allow them to help us in a way that they can handle them. If we know Pops doesn't talk, let's don't make Pops talk, but maybe he could say a word or offer a toast or something like that. But we can find a way to get through this together because, as I say, we've had enough loss in our life. And we don't want the loss and the death of our child to cause more estrangement within our family. Let's find a way to get through this together. And I promise I won't be overbearing with you. If we both come a little ways, we can make that happen. And I've seen it work successfully, but it does take a communication. And getting angry and yelling at people doesn't usually work.
Mm-hmm.
But to say, you know, it hurts me, and I don't know how long that's going to hurt me for the rest of my life. But please understand, I'm grieving, and I always will be to some extent. So
Yeah,
there'll never be a birthday I don't honor. If you're waiting for that, you're going to be waiting a long time.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I think people need to know that also it's okay if there's something you just can't go to. You're not to that.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, that's another way that we need to release expectations of ourselves.
Exactly.
And there are going to be people who aren't going to understand that. It's
Right.
just going to happen. They're not going to understand why you're not going to that event.
Yeah.
And you can't explain
And,
it to them with words. You can't do it.
no, and you know, in my holiday workshop too, I talk about so if somebody asked you today, you know, Alan, can you come to this 4th of July, blah, blah, blah thing? And I'm newer in my grief. Well, you know what? I don't know how I'm going to feel on the 4th of July when I'm new in grief. I have no clue because I wake up one day and I'm like, you know, I think I might be getting a little bit better. Then the next day, I maybe can't get out of bed. And so this is what I said, but we can be polite with people and honest and say, here's the deal. Laura, if you're going to have that party on July 4th and you need an RSVP and you're going to order a catered dinner for me, let me tell you the best answer I can give you at this moment is an absolute maybe. I don't know how I'm going to feel. So I don't want you to order a catered dinner or have hard feelings toward me. I'd love to be there. But on my worst day, I couldn't be there. Please understand, on my worst day, I couldn't be there. On my best day, I maybe could. So I want to, but let me tell you up front, it's going to depend because if I don't take care of myself in this grief, then I have no chance. So if you can honor that, but rather than just, you know, a lot of times grieving people are the worst at it. They'll say they're going to be somewhere to get the pressure off, and then they just don't show up. Well, that's not right either. And, you know, Gloria Horsley, who I do, Dr. Gloria Horsley, she's good at that too. She just tells, you know, tell it like it is, but, you know, you don't want somebody making big plans for you. Say maybe. And if that's good enough for you, great. And if not, no. I can't give you a definite
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, good questions. Great. I mean, we all deal with it. We all have to figure those things out in our own mind.
Can we real quick talk about our other children? the
Yeah.
sibling loss, because that's another area where there can be a lot of hurt there with, it seems like most common are the other kids, they just don't want to talk about the other sibling. They don't want to do the graveside stuff, go there with you every week, and they don't want to, maybe they don't want to celebrate the birthday and they don't want to talk about it, and they go off on their own life, and we can take that really, really hard, can't we?
Yeah, it's one of the toughest challenges sometimes we face, and we can't force them to grieve. I've over for many years, excuse me, I work with Dr. Diehl, who I think is probably maybe the
Yes.
premier sibling person in the world. And I've learned so much from her. And early on, my surviving boys, I always say I had one that couldn't stop talking about it and one that wouldn't talk about it. And I kept, saying to her, what should I do? What should I do? And she just really helped me understand how siblings grieve differently. Like, they see us grieving all the time and they look at us like, God, how can you stay in that place?
Mm-hmm.
We look at them, they might be grieving, and then all of a sudden they're outside playing basketball like there's nothing in the
Right.
world wrong. And to honor the siblings, to know that just like us, some of them talk, some of them don't, some of them cry, some of them don't. But Heidi always says that they are talking to somebody, and to encourage them maybe to talk to somebody, but to try to force them into doing things, or make a bargain with them that says, I get that you don't like this one or that one, but could we do this on the birthday? Could we sit around and make Becca's favorite food? And would you do that for me? And then, you can do this the way that you want to, or come for an hour or two. The sad part is when there become estrangements between parent and child. And we see that happen, and it's sad and heartbreaking.
Yeah, unfortunately, we experienced that. I mean, it was.
Yeah, and
That's some of those, I call them domino effects, those after effects.
Yeah, we are, because we are crazy, because we have a child die, and of course our biggest fear is that another child's going to die. So we go into helicopter mode, no matter what age our children are. And that's our greatest fear. And then we see them, and we're like, oh my gosh, are they gonna, is their mental health okay, whatever's going on? And it's a fine balance there. And a lot of us want to force them to talk. And, it took me a while, but I finally found that level of where they would want to talk about it or not talk about it. And then it got to the place where they would want to talk about it sometimes that would surprise me. But granting, the gift of tolerance to grieve in their own way, and to check in once in a while. And if we're asking others to say to us, is there something I could do for you right now that would be of help? And to say, I am here to hurt with you. If we gave them that, and just shut it, rather than say, I need to know what you feel. It's important to me to know. And to also let them know that their life matters just as much as Ashley's life.
Yes.
And all my focus now is on Ashley, because she's gone and because I'm trying to figure out how to do this. But I want you to know your life matters. And if you see me doing things where you think I'm too far, let's talk about it. But I will respect you to do your thing. But you really free somebody when you say, I'm here to hurt with you.
Yeah. And you've mentioned both Dr. Heidi and Dr. Gloria Horsley, their mother-daughter, and we talked to them at the beginning of the month. And so for those watching, if you didn't see it, it's I can't think off the top of my head the title, but it's helping our children deal with sibling loss.
Yeah, they're the best. Well, I'll tell you, they're good.
They are. They just team up so well together to help.
opentohope.com. And, I always tell every time I speak and play, man, you go talk about the best grief resources in the world are right there. But yes, that's a big, big topic. And I think they're the best at it anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've almost been talking for an hour now, Alan.
Holy cow. I got to get it to work.
Time to,
this has been fun.
Time to wrap it up. So just a couple of things. I do want to mention, you had said something about your tours, and are you completely done with those now with this COVID, or are you still going to try to get a last tour?
No, I am not. I
Across
am
the West,
grounded.
what we're
I
talking.
am, yeah, I am grounded. So the final, for those that don't know, I travel around the country, speak and play, and I write music as well, and I perform that music. And this was going to be my final tour.
Yeah, and I was
I've
going to
been
get you up here to Wisconsin. I was talking to Joe about it. We were going to get you here.
so excited, and 1,600 cities, and so I was going to do about 100 cities. Well, it got all shut down. I was already going to be in Hawaii and all over the
Oh,
place. But anyway, so I have decided, the spring got canceled. There's nothing I could do about that. But it's unrealistic right now to plan the fall when we don't know. So it looks like February of next year, we're going to do the final tour.
okay.
We'll start prepping up for it real big in the fall, and I'd love to come to Wisconsin. And then, but that'll be the final tour. And then people are, well, are you retiring? You're not doing this? No, I'll still do this. I'm just not going to do these national tours. So it's it's difficult not touring. I'm adjusting a little bit to it. I haven't been home in the spring like this, just not doing, but I'm trying to reach out. And, I sat down and had a little talk with God, and I said, when I first started this, it wasn't about tours and all that and CDs and concerts. It was about just trying to help people. And this whole world of Zoom and that type of thing. So I'm trying to support everybody that's doing what you're doing, to take the time and to be there. So I've done several of these, and then I do some chapter meetings where they're doing them online, and we'll see where that takes us. But you know what, I just honor everybody, Lauren. I want you to know that, like I said at the top of the program, I just honor people that are doing what you're doing, and for you to step up. And I know the work involved in lining up all these guests and doing what you did. So I just want you to know I appreciate it and I honor it. And if there's ever anything I can do to help you in your work or in your service, please let me know. And thank you, and God bless you, and honoring Becca the way that you do with this wonderful work.
Yeah. And just to let people know, if you have ever done a candlelight service with your child, you probably know Alan's song. You may not realize who it is, but you wrote that song. Tonight I
Hold this candle.
This candle, yeah, and it's played around the world for candlelight services whenever we have
Who
one.
knew?
That's what we're
I always say, when I played that for my mom right after I wrote it, I played it with the guitar. I thought it was I thought I got it. My mom said, "Son, that will be the song you will be remembered for. And of all the years and all the music, that is the biggest song." So it was just because I wrote it for us. So thank you for that plug. You can find me on alanpedersen.org,
perfect. Yeah.
Pedersen. Find me on Facebook. And how many more of these, Laura, are you doing?
We just have 2 more.
Wow.
We're getting to the end of May. So, so everybody look up the other stuff. Lots of good topics. And
I don't know if you had David Kessler on or not, but he's doing, I did his show a couple of weeks ago, and he's doing 2 things a day, an online support group. And, I'm like, buddy, he said, well, I was thinking of you because he's like, I might have taken on a little more than I should have.
I'm giving myself a few days off when this month.
I would say they are well earned. Take an extra day off. I'll authorize it.
All right, there we go.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, and for those, you can also check out gpshope.org and check out our resources and everything there too, and support. So thank you so much, Alan.
Yeah, when this gets put up, throw a link on my page. We'll make sure and promote it. So thank you so much, Laura. God bless you.
You too. Thanks, Alan.